Hi, my name's Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be breaking down episode 4 of Netflix's new series Shadow and Bone. I have already done episode breakdowns for episodes 1 and 3, and you can check all of those out in the playlist that is linked below of all of mine and my husband's Shadow and Bone content. So let's jump right in. Episode 4 is titled Odkazatsya, which means the abandoned, a term used by Grisha to refer to those without Grisha powers. This is a term the Darkling used with disdain to refer to Mal in the books, so I had a feeling that this episode would be one where we see a lot of Mal, and sure enough we did. It starts off with a lot of what Mal has been doing since he and Alina were separated, shows how deeply he misses Alina, and then recognizes her drawing of the stag and volunteers to go searching for it. Alina is given the black and gold kefta, but she initially denies it. She heads out on horseback ride with General Kerrigan. He tells her to call him by his first name, Alexander, which was a shock to all of us book fans because this did not happen until much later in the series. It definitely did not happen in book 1, and it definitely did not happen in a conversation like this. It was a little bit more intimate, so I think a lot of us were pretty surprised that that happened. In Krabirsk, the crows, including Inej, channeling Nina with eating this entire plate of cinnamon rolls, which I love to see it. They're talking about how their trip across the fold went, and then they are discussing entering the palace for the winter feast, trying to come up with a plan for getting into the little palace and kidnapping Alina. Kaz has a plan, and Jesper gets excited and channels the entire fandom saying time for a heist. He then leaves our beloved Milo in the care of someone else with a bullet to remember him by. Alina goes on a horseback ride with the Darkling, and they discuss the fold's creation by the Black Heretic. Alina discusses her fears of becoming another Grisha who fails and is hated as much as the Black Heretic is, and the Darkling tells her that she is not alone. Mal's friends Mikhail and Dubrov volunteer to go with him to search for the stag. I really love all the banter between these three. The show did such a great job bringing these characters to life and making them lovable. We only got to see them for like a brief moment at the beginning of book 1, and then we never see them again. They're brought up when Mal says that they died, but Alina says that she had always hated them, but she's, sad for Mal that they died. Whereas in the show, they completely wrote out her disliking Mikhail and Dubrov, which I appreciated because it wasn't really necessary. I really appreciated them giving Mal POVs. I know I've said this before, but again, it just gave us the chance to flesh out these friendships they have, and they really humanized Mikhail and Dubrov for me. Alina is working with Bagra, who is even harder on her in the show than in the books, and honestly, I loved to see it. Kaz starts the heist to get the blueprints for the little palace, and this scene was so hilariously out of character for Kaz. I didn't even want to blink while watching it because I was loving it so much. Jesper sneaks in as a guard, cuts the lights, which allows Inej to get into the building unnoticed. Inej gets the blueprints copied, but the other guards notice that the lights were cut, so she and Jesper have to pull some really Wraith-like moves in order to go out unnoticed. We get this scene of the Darkling talking to Fedyor about how Nina Zenik has gone missing, and he wants Fedyor to go find out what's happened to her. The Darkling never brought up Nina Zenik. She was actually much younger when the Shadow and Bone trilogy happened, so this never happened in the books, but I'm really liking the way that they tied Nina Zenik in with Alina's timeline, and it kind of seemed like Fedyor was a little bit into Nina, but I don't know, maybe we'll see more of that at a later time. Speaking of Nina, we get this great scene between her and Matthias. He offers her food in exchange for answers, and she's like, yeah, hard pass on that, my dude. This conversation shows the conflict between the Fjordans and the Rovkin Grisha, shows how little Fjordans actually understand Grisha and their powers, and shows the constant internal conflict that Matthias has, where he feels like he needs to follow his religious beliefs, but also feels like sending Grisha to their death isn't just, despite what he's been taught. Then he feels like a dick and offers her food even though she won't tell him anything. She says she won't take scraps from the likes of him, and he's like, you will, which, yeah, he's not wrong. The crows are still looking for a way into the little palace, and the conductor sets something up for Inej and Jesper to be part of a group of traveling performers performing for the winter feast at the little palace. We see a flashback to how Alina got out of taking her Grisha test as a child at the orphanage in Karanzin, cutting her hands so that they wouldn't properly test her, Bagra helps Alina realize she's been denying herself her whole life in order to be there for Mal and not separated from him. Alina, unable to sleep, goes to see Kerrigan in his war room. He's brooding over all the problems in the country, as one does, and they have a moment. But then she says she should go as she's clearly still feeling conflicted about Mal, which honestly, I'm already a show Malina stan, so I'm like, Alina, run! But as the episode goes on, she becomes convinced that the reason she still hasn't heard from Mal is because he just doesn't care about her. In a moment similar to what happened in the books, she lets go of all these feelings that are holding back and decides to fully embrace her power. Speaking of me being a Malina stan, I'm obsessed with this scene we got towards the end when we flash back to Mal towards the beginning of his career in the First Army. So he finds out Alina is in a holding cell for getting into it with her supervisor, the quartermaster. So he goes and finds the guy, smashes a bottle over his head so he can get in trouble too, and then winds up in a holding cell right next to Alina. He shows her his wound, saying he got 11 stitches, and she shows him the scar she got from her self-inflicted wound that kept her from getting tested properly as a child by the Grisha. So they each have a matching wound they got from trying to stay together. I love that. He says, we match. And he says, yeah, we do. And my heart, I cannot handle it. But sadly, she asks Genya to erase hers because she thinks that Mal has forgotten her and she wants to move on. Meanwhile, Mal, Dubrov, and Mikhail are searching for the stag and are attacked by Fjordans who kill Mikhail and Dubrov, but an injured Mal is able to make it out alive, and he does get a glimpse of the infamous stag that brought them all the way out into harm's way. So that is it for episode 4. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.